Why have the US and Israel attacked Iran? On February 28, 2026. A quick note for our viewers. The following analysis contains descriptions of military conflict and its consequences. Viewer discretion is advised. Under the cover of darkness, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury, while its key regional ally, Israel, simultaneously executed Operation Roaring Lion. These were not isolated skirmishes, but a meticulously coordinated and large-scale series of strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The stated objectives were precise and strategically vital: to neutralize Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command and control centers, dismantle its integrated air defense systems, cripple its offensive missile and drone infrastructure, and sever its key logistics nodes. The initial hours of the conflict set a new and dangerous precedent for modern warfare. In this special report, we will assess what has fundamentally changed, militarily, economically, and diplomatically, in the wake of these events. We will then outline the potential future scenarios and the critical indicators to watch as this crisis unfolds. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must first examine the official justifications provided by Washington and Tel Aviv. Officials framed their preemptive actions around four primary reasons. First, and most urgently, were the rapidly shrinking timelines related to Iran's nuclear and missile programs. US and Israeli leaders publicly cited an imminent existential threat. Intelligence reports, they alleged, indicated that Iran was mere months away from transferring its most sensitive nuclear materials and centrifuge operations into a new generation of hardened underground bunkers. These facilities, buried deep within mountain ranges, were reportedly designed to be impervious to conventional bunker-busting munitions, making them far harder, if not impossible, to strike once completed. The window to act, they argued, was closing decisively. The second justification was the definitive collapse of diplomacy. According to official statements, the latest round of indirect nuclear talks, which had been sputtering for months, finally broke down without resolution in February 2026. Hopes for a diplomatic off-ramp had evaporated, replaced by a consensus that containment through negotiation was no longer a viable strategy. Third, the decision was framed within a human rights context, amplified by powerful regime change rhetoric. Officials explicitly referenced the 2026 Iran massacres, a term used to describe a brutal and widely reported crackdown on domestic protesters earlier in the year. In a highly publicized address, US President Trump directly appealed to the Iranian populace, urging them to seize control of your destiny, a statement widely interpreted as an open endorsement of internal uprising. On March 1st, Iranian state media confirmed that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed during the Feb 28 joint US-Israeli strikes. Roughly 30 missiles struck his secure Tehran compound. His daughter, son-in-law, and a grandchild were killed in the initial attack. His wife, Mansoureh Khojasteh Baghazadeh, died of her injuries on March 2nd. Tehran has declared a 40-day mourning period and a 7-day national holiday. The assassination has sharply accelerated Iranian retaliatory attacks across the region. Following the assassination, an interim three-person leadership council assumed authority until the Assembly of Experts selects a successor: President Masoud Pezeshkian, Judiciary Chief Gholam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, and senior cleric Alireza Arafi. While President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu called the strike justice, governments worldwide braced for further escalation. Militarily, the execution of the opening wave was a textbook display of 21st-century joint operations. It reportedly blended sophisticated cyber and electronic warfare to blind and confuse Iranian defenses, followed immediately by a massive suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses, or SEAD, DEAD, campaign. This involved waves of anti-radiation missiles and stealth aircraft targeting radar installations and surface-to-air missile batteries. Simultaneously, long-range precision fires, launched from naval vessels, submarines, and strategic bombers, were directed at pre-identified command nodes, weapons depots, and drone manufacturing sites, aiming to degrade Iran's ability to see, communicate, and retaliate. The Iranian response was not long in coming. Beginning on March 1st, Tehran and its allies launched a broad and asymmetric retaliatory campaign. Rather than engaging in a direct, symmetrical fight it could not win, Tehran signaled its intent to inflict indirect pressure on Washington by targeting its allies and assets across the region. An official declaration stated that any regional facilities hosting US forces were now considered legitimate military targets. This brought the gleaming metropolises of the United Arab Emirates directly into the crosshairs. But why Dubai and Abu Dhabi? Beyond their status as global hubs for finance and tourism, they host critical infrastructure and significant U.S. assets. Most notably, Al Dhafra Air Base near Abu Dhabi is a major logistics and operations hub for the US Air Force, making it a high-value strategic target. The initial reports of impacts in Dubai painted a picture of chaos and vulnerability. Verified reports confirmed damage to iconic luxury hotels, including the Fairmont the Palm and the sail-shaped Burj Al Arab, likely intended to terrorize the expatriate community and cripple the tourism sector. A separate strike at Dubai International Airport's Terminal 3 reportedly caused minor structural damage and several staff injuries, forcing a temporary shutdown of one of the world's busiest air hubs. At the critical Jebel Ali port, fires were reported, believed to have been caused by the debris of intercepted drones. All details are still being verified as damage assessments are updated, and casualty figures remain unconfirmed as authorities work to control the flow of information. The conflict quickly metastasized beyond Iran and the UAE. By early March, a cascade of strikes and counter-strikes had touched Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan and Iraq, turning the entire region into a live fire zone. The most significant escalation occurred on March 2nd, when Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, formally announced it was entering the war. It immediately launched a massive barrage of rockets from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. Israel's response was swift and devastating, with regional reporting indicating heavy bombardment of Hezbollah strongholds in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Early casualty reports from multiple fronts are varied and difficult to confirm, but sources suggest the death toll is already in the hundreds, with thousands more injured. With the region descending into open warfare, Iran played its most powerful economic card. It announced the immediate and indefinite closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply travels. The effect was instantaneous. More than 150 freight ships, including dozens of supertankers, were reported to be stalled or delayed, effectively blockaded. Global oil and gas prices spiked by over 30% in a single day, driven by fears of a catastrophic supply shock and prohibitive insurance constraints, as maritime insurers began quoting astronomical war risk premiums or refusing coverage altogether. Global financial markets began to violently reprice geopolitical risk. Energy benchmarks like Brent and WTI crude jumped to levels not seen in over a decade, threatening to trigger a global recession. Maritime insurance premiums for vessels even considering travel near the Persian Gulf rose by over 1,000%. In a classic flight to safety, gold gained significantly as a traditional safe haven asset, and the US dollar strengthened against most other currencies due to broad risk-off flows. Volatility indexes surged as market participants struggled to gauge the conflict's potential duration, the extent of the damage to energy infrastructure, and the cascading second-order effects of potential new sanctions on Iran's trading partners, particularly emerging market economies heavily reliant on energy imports. So where could this conflict go from here? In a recent briefing, President Trump projected that major combat operations could last approximately 4 weeks. However, independent analysts have outlined 3 primary scenarios, each with vastly different implications. Scenario 1 is a contained exchange. In this best-case outcome, the conflict remains largely limited to strikes between Iran, Israel and US forces, with a de-escalation in a matter of weeks. This would result in elevated but ultimately manageable energy prices and limited global economic fallout. Scenario 2 is a rolling skirmish. This envisions a protracted conflict lasting weeks or months, characterized by episodic strikes, drone attacks and proxy warfare, without a full-scale ground invasion. This would create persistent market volatility, suppress global growth, and keep regional tensions at a boiling point. The most dangerous possibility is Scenario 3. a full-blown regional escalation. This would see wider participation from other nations, a potential ground war, and a severe, prolonged energy shock coupled with catastrophic disruption to global trade. To navigate the uncertainty, we must watch several key indicators: the tempo and scale of strikes, the level of proxy activation across the region, the saturation rate of advanced air and missile defenses on all sides, the frequency of naval incidents in the Strait of Hormuz, the spillover of cyber impacts into global finance and energy sectors, the daily movement of oil benchmarks, and critically, the official rhetoric from all capitals involved. For students of international affairs, it is a crucial time to practice critical source evaluation and to distinguish between official claims and verified facts. The situation remains highly fluid, and the long-term consequences are only beginning to emerge. For continued in-depth analysis of this developing story, subscribe and stay informed.